No one noticed the waitress until she froze. Top floor, private dining room, a hotel in Seoul, 12 men deciding $1 billion deal. Kang Do-hyun said it plainly. "We accept your proposal." But the translator turned to the African delegation and said something else entirely. He says your family has no honor. Hands vanished under the table. Security shifted its weight. Another lie followed. She counted them. One lie, then another, then another. Enough to start a war. She crossed the room, leaned in, whispered, "Your translator is lying." He laughed. "She doesn't even speak Korean." She calmly repeated every word in flawless Korean. Silence. 6 hours earlier, Adaeze John stood in the staff corridor checking her reflection in a dull steel elevator door, humming an old Yoruba melody. Her grandmother used to sing it while braiding her hair back in Lagos, back when the biggest decision in Adaeze's life was which university would offer her a scholarship. She hummed it without noticing. She always did whenever her mind was working through something difficult. Lately, that was most of the time. If you've ever been the only person in a room who knew the truth and had to decide whether saying it was worth the risk, stay with this one. It only gets more dangerous from here. Because 6 hours before any of that happened, she was just a waitress trying to get through her shift. She had a degree in architecture, a portfolio that had once impressed professors in 2 countries, and a laminated badge that read Grand Hanseong Hotel, guest services, because her license hadn't cleared Korean immigration review yet, and rent didn't wait for paperwork. She never complained. Mrs. Shim, the hotel's general manager, ran her staff like reputation was the only currency that mattered. 5-star service begins with invisible excellence, she said that morning, out of habit more than warning. Adaeze nodded and went back to setting a private dining room for a meeting she'd been told, vaguely was important. By the time she reached the table, it was already dressed. White linen, glasses at precise angles, a single orchid at the center that a florist had replaced twice because Mrs. Shim hadn't liked the first 2. Adaeze straightened a fork that was already straight, a habit older than she could remember, and wondered what kind of men required this much silence just to sit down. Across the city, 40 floors above the Han River, Kang Do-hyun straightened his cuffs and looked out over Seoul without really seeing it. To the public, he was the 38-year-old chairman of Kang Global Logistics, sharp-suited, soft-spoken. What the public didn't know, what the underworld never forgot, was the empire his father had built before him, one that moved fear more than cargo. Today's negotiation was supposed to bury that inheritance for good, a legal shipping corridor between Korea and West Africa. If it worked, 2 very different worlds would become partners. Director Min stood beside him, adjusting his glasses out of habit rather than need. The translator arrived early, Min said, requested the seating chart himself, says he prefers to know exactly where everyone's hands will be. Thorough, Do-hyun said, or careful. Something in the way Min said it made Do-hyun glance at him a second longer than the comment required. There was no pattern yet to name, only instinct. Do-hyun rotated his father's signet ring once, without noticing, the way he always did when a decision had already been made and only the waiting remained. "It's time," he told his driver. The car moved through the rain in silence. Do-hyun didn't check his phone. He watched the streets pass, the way a man watches something he's already decided to leave behind. Neither of them knew it yet, but somewhere in the building they were both walking toward. A man with a pen clipped in his breast pocket had already decided the meeting would fail, and that its failure would look, to everyone watching, like an accident of culture and pride. The silence in the dining room didn't break so much as it dissolved, slowly, into disbelief. Do-hyun studied the waitress beside him. He said nothing for a long moment. Then, without raising his voice, "Korean." She answered. "English." She answered. "Yoruba." Something flickered across Chief Tariq's face, the ghost of a smile he didn't yet allow himself. "Japanese." She answered that too. By the time she finished, Park Woo-jin's easy composure had gone very quiet. Do-hyun set down his pen. "Translate the entire meeting, every sentence, from the beginning." She did. Where the translator had told the Koreans the Africans were stalling for leverage, Do-hyun had really said, "Take the time you need." Where he'd told the Africans they'd been dismissed as unserious, Do-hyun had said the opposite, that this partnership mattered more to him than the numbers on the page. Sentence by sentence, the room realized it had nearly gone to war over a conversation that never happened. "This whole time," Chief Tariq said quietly, "we were arguing with a ghost." He rotated his ring once. This time, he didn't let go of the smile. Somewhere behind his composure, Park Woo-jin's thumb moved against the pen in his breast pocket. The same small motion Director Min would later realize had marked every lie that worked. This time, it marked the moment he understood one hadn't. Security moved on him before he'd finished adjusting his jacket. He didn't resist. He didn't even look surprised, only faintly disappointed. The way a chess player looks when a game ends early, against an opponent he never bothered to study. Do-hyun crouched down so they were eye to eye. "Someone paid you." Park Woo-jin smiled, the kind of smile that knows something you don't. "You have no idea." He never made it to interrogation. The convoy was ambushed on a service road outside the city, clean, fast, professional, over in under 9 seconds. He was dead before backup arrived. The official report blamed a rival gang. Do-hyun read it twice, in an office lit only by his desk lamp. He believed none of it. By nightfall, he understood why. The gas line in Adaeze's apartment had been tampered with. A maintenance visit she never requested, hours before she got home. She survived only because a neighbor smelled it first. She survived a motorcycle that gunned toward her after her shift because her body dropped behind a parked truck before her mind caught up. She survived a third attempt only because a red pinprick of light traced her curtains once and vanished. The same instant Do-hyun's surveillance team pulled the shooter off a neighboring rooftop. She never saw the light. She only remembered the stillness afterward, her own reflection in the dark window, frozen, like something waiting to be told it was safe to move. 3 attempts, Director Min said, taking off his glasses. He cleaned one lens with a folded handkerchief. 3 methods, 1 target. He looked up. They're not silencing the translator anymore. They're erasing everyone who heard the real conversation. There's only one person left who did. Do-hyun didn't answer. He didn't need to. By morning, a woman who had spent 3 years trying to be unnoticed had become the single most protected civilian in Seoul. She agreed to protective custody, not because she trusted him, because someone with terrifying resources wanted her gone, and she wasn't ready to let them win that quietly. The safe houses changed every 2 days. The faces around her didn't. Do-hyun's people, quiet and competent, and Do-hyun himself, present more than his schedule should have allowed. Respect built in small currency. He noticed she straightened mismatched cups without realizing it. She noticed he never raised his voice, even when his security chief admitted to a costly mistake. There was no romance yet, only trust, accumulating quietly. A drafting pencil appeared beside her plate on the 4th day. No explanation. He'd noticed her sketching on takeout menus. "You didn't have to do this," she said, turning it over in her hand. "I know," he said. That was all he said. "What did you translate?" he asked her one evening, once he'd learned about the scholarship, the night shifts, the unpaid Saturdays. Everything they were too afraid to get wrong. Hospital forms, custody papers, apology letters nobody wanted to send with a mistake in them. "That's not architecture." "No," she said, "but it mattered just as much." "You could have stopped once you didn't need the money," he said. "I never stopped needing to be useful to someone," she said. "Money isn't the only thing people run out of." He was quiet for a moment. "People fear me long before they respect me," he said, almost to himself. "I stopped noticing the difference. Fear isn't respect." Nobody had spoken to him like that in years. He didn't argue. He just looked at her, a little longer than the conversation required. Later, she found him at the window, tie loosened, watching rain move across rooftops. "Do you always do that?" she asked quietly. "Do what?" "Leave a room before anyone notices you're gone." He didn't answer right away. She stood beside him instead, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched, and let the silence hold what neither of them was ready to say. 3 floors below, Director Min was drowning in financial transfers that traced through shell companies on 4 continents, a logistics firm in Rotterdam, a translation agency in Geneva, a diplomatic consultancy in Lagos that, as far as he could tell, had never once translated anything. Every thread curled back to the same nameless account. Patient. Untraceable. He found the name in a footnote, a case officially closed 9 years earlier for lack of evidence. The 9th voice. He brought the folder to Do-hyun himself. It was heavier than it looked. "You've heard rumors before," Min said. "Everyone in this business has. I always assumed they were exaggerated." "And now?" "Now I think we underestimated them." Not arms dealers, not smugglers. An organization that dealt exclusively in language. One altered sentence in the right negotiation could trigger a war. A currency collapse in Manila, traced to a single mistranslated clause. A border skirmish in the Sahel, sparked by 4 altered words in a diplomatic cable. They didn't choose sides. They made sure there were sides to choose. Today's hotel meeting hadn't been unusual. It had been routine. Unable to remove Adaeze quietly, the 9th voice changed tactics. The call came on a gray afternoon. A trembling voice claimed Mrs. Adeyemi. A widow Adaeze had once helped for months had collapsed at the community center. The voice knew her name, her street, even the exact time Adaeze usually left her shifts there, a detail she'd never told anyone at the safe house, which meant someone had been watching her long before the hotel. She didn't hesitate. She never had, for people who'd once trusted her with names spelled wrong on official forms. 5 minutes, she told the security detail. She believed it when she said it. The center was empty. Lights on, a kettle still warm. She called the widow's name once into the quiet. Nothing answered but a ceiling fan. The doors locked behind her without a single raised voice. And that, more than anything, was what made it terrifying. A stranger's calm voice from a hidden speaker. "Sit down, wait." The message reached Do-hyun within the hour. One witness for one empire. Every instinct told him to tear Seoul apart until he found her. His hand closed into a fist he didn't remember making. For the first time in years, he understood exactly what his father would have done. Then he understood something else. That reaction, the raid, the bodies, the war, was exactly what they wanted. He would not become their product. At 2 a.m, Director Min found it. A single grammatical irregularity in the ransom message, an obscure regional phrase he'd seen exactly once before. He took off his glasses, cleaned the lens, looked up. Incheon, he said. A decommissioned interpreter training facility outside the port. It's the only place that phrase has ever come from. Do-hyun assembled a team built for silence, not spectacle. No explosions, no armored convoy announcing itself 3 blocks out. "You're not wearing a vest," Min said. "No." Min didn't argue a second time. He already knew he'd lost. If you've made it this far, this is usually where these stories go, one of 2 ways. And I think you'll want to see which one this becomes. Stick around. The drive took 40 minutes that felt longer. No one spoke. Min reread the file on his knees, as if the grammar might change if he stared at it long enough. Do-hyun stared into the dark, one hand resting on his knee. Perfectly still. The ring on his finger, untouched. Room by room they moved through the dark. Abandoned lecture halls, a chalkboard still faintly bearing a conjugation table in 3 languages, dust turning in a single flashlight beam. Room by room they found nothing, until at the end of a corridor that smelled of mildew and old paper, they found her, restrained, unharmed, humming, very quietly, the same melody she always hummed when her mind needed somewhere steady to go. The guard had expected an army, gunfire, a story that ended in bodies. Instead, Do-hyun walked in alone, at the front, quiet, controlled. It unsettled the man more than a raid would have. As they led him out in restraints, he smiled, something close to admiration. "Languages never die," he said. "Neither do we." Do-hyun said nothing, but driving back into the city, both of them silent in the dark car, he understood something that would sit with him a long time. The translator who died in that ambush was never the enemy. He was one voice among many in an organization with no single face to defeat. The final negotiation was rescheduled for the following month. Same room, same rain against the windows. This time, Do-hyun changed the terms himself before a single chair was pulled from the table. No single translator would ever stand between 2 delegations again. Every statement in every language verified twice by separate interpreters before it left the room. "This will slow everything down," a board member said quietly. "Good," Do-hyun said. "Last time this room moved fast, a man nearly died for a sentence he never said." Chief Tariq listened, rotated his ring once, let it rest. His decision had already been made. For the first time, the 9th voice had no room left to work in, which was exactly why, Director Min said, watching 3 unmarked cars converge on the city from different routes, their leadership would be forced into the open. A cornered organization built on manipulation has only one tool left when manipulation fails. The attack came fast, clumsy, compared to everything before it, because for the first time, there was no lie to hide behind it. "Hold the room," Do-hyun said. Korean security and African security moved as one. No confusion to exploit, no fabricated insult to hide inside. Just men in dark coats, moving toward people who already knew exactly what was true. The attack failed within minutes. Afterward, standing over the captured operatives, Do-hyun made a choice his father never would have. He handed every document, every recording, every financial trail to international authorities. Investigations opened across a dozen countries within the week. Auditors in Rotterdam, diplomats quietly reassigned in Geneva. A translation agency in Lagos shuttered overnight. The 9th voice, silent for decades, began collapsing in public for the first time. No one in that room believed it was finished. Organizations built on shadows rarely die all at once. But something had shifted permanently in how two very different worlds understood each other. Before we get to the ending, if a story like this is the kind of thing you want more of, this is a good moment to subscribe, because what happens next is the part I think you'll remember. Months later, the partnership that nearly died in a hotel dining room launched publicly. Headlines called it one of the most unexpected alliances in recent memory. Adaeze had returned to architecture. Her relicensing cleared quietly, months after the danger that once made it feel irrelevant. She led affordable housing projects across Seoul now, her name on the permits, spelled correctly, in her own language and Korean both. She rarely straightened objects on her desk anymore. Not because she'd stopped noticing details, because she no longer needed the habit to steady her. Kang Do-hyun spent those same months dismantling what remained of his family's old foundations. Contracts unwound, debts forgiven instead of collected. He took the old portraits down from his father's office, one by one, and replaced them with nothing at all. People still lowered their voices when they said his name, but it had stopped being about fear. One afternoon, he found her at a small cafe overlooking the Han River, sketching on a napkin because she'd forgotten her notebook again. Late sunlight moved across the water outside, catching the wake of a passing barge. He sat across from her without asking. She looked up and smiled. So, no translators? He almost laughed. No translators. No secrets. No secrets. She reached across the table. He took her hand. Outside, ships moved slowly along the river, carrying cargo instead of consequence, honest partnership instead of hidden intent. As the afternoon fades, the camera slowly pulls away from the cafe, past the window into the crowded street beyond, where a well-dressed businessman finishes a phone call in fluent Korean, then switches, without missing a beat, into flawless Japanese. He closes a slim black notebook. On its cover, a simple silver emblem catches the light. 9. He slips it into his coat and disappears into the crowd, unnoticed. Every war begins with a sentence. Peace begins with one, too. We simply choose the sentence. If this story stayed with you, I'd love for you to subscribe and share it with someone who enjoys stories where courage changes history. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.